test or that there are any standards, they just feed the cow, especially zero grazing animals. You know, the way nature intended was for cows to just roam around and collect food so that they can choose for themselves. But now, if you cage them all together and you provide them with food, then it is imperative that we now control what leaves that area to go feed the rest of the public. The previous senator talked about issues of, vet officers certifying meat. I think now, since the county governments have been given a role in this bill, which is to implement and enforce food safety measures, they have to make sure that if it is in a region and there are milk collectors or milk aggregators, before anybody goes out there to buy that milk, they have to ensure that they carry out very basic tests, Madam Speaker. One, what is the total fat content? In fact, the one which is most important is to see whether the levels of aflatoxins are within the standard set for human consumption. Because we affect them. We feed them with a lot of soya, sometimes it's not even soya. Because I can tell you, most farmers in these countries will feed their cows with soya that we've imported from Uganda that has not been processed well. It has actually just been put into a big pot, and then and then a big fire has been put in so that you can be able to remove the oils, and then now you give the meal to the cows. We have to have these standards. So, and that is why, Madam Speaker, I'm reiterating on the importance, and I think we need to think. I know most bills that are introduced in this House, we are very careful when it comes to the issue of either it's a money bill or it's not a money bill. But I think it is imperative that all county governments allocate a lot of resources, train a lot of food safety individuals who can be able to go out there and measure the food, measure what we are feeding the cows, so that at least we can be able to live in a good environment. Madam Speaker, if you look at the rate of cancer in this country, it is skyrocketing. You ask yourself why. It is because people are feeding on cancerous substances. You just get something, you feed that cow, and then you end up eating it. There's a place, Madam Speaker, called Mpurputia in Narok County, in Narok South. We have so many challenges in that place. It's up in the Loita Hills, a very beautiful place. But there's no water, good water for human consumption. So where the people fetch water is the same sort of like hole that wild animals come in and pee and drink the water there. So you'll find that a lot of diseases which are common in that area, one is cancer, which is very dangerous. So I think once county governments have been able to be empowered, and this role in the function of the county government must actually be enhanced to ensure that they play a critical role even when the cabinet secretary is sitting down to develop regulations on implementation of this bill. Madam Speaker, it is also important to ensure that in our feeds and also our food, there is a traceability element to ensure accountability. If you buy food from a particular region, and I keep saying, we have 47 counties. We can benefit from each other. We don't need this World Bank and IMF. We don't need them. We train among each other. We say, Kirinyaga County, what can you provide us in Narok? Narok County, what can you provide? So we work together. We trade among each other. So if I go to Kirinyaga County and I buy animal feeds, I come and feed my cows. If my cows get sick, I can trace it. So it is important to enhance the traceability element in this bill, and I'm happy that the controller is going to enforce. I hope that when we are now developing regulations, we can be very clear in terms of the traceability. Risk assessment, regulatory standards, inspections and monitoring, traceability are very, very important. We have talked about the issue of exporting our products. We should not only be concerned about EU standards, where we're talking about exporting products outside the country, but we should also be able to be concerned about me exporting my products from Narok to Machakos County. The standards must be the same. Let me reiterate again, Madam Speaker, on something which I've seen in this bill, and it is important for us to educate the public as to why we are supporting this bill, is that the bill provides for a provision where the county government can be able to conduct capacity building on food safety and food standards. That is very critical. It is very, very important. We have raised issues of fertilizers. What fertilizers are we using? You know, I know in the last parliament, there was someone who was coming in and saying that organic fertilizer is bad, and of course they are trying to create business for their own ventures. As I conclude, there are very many consequential amendments in this bill. I've looked at the issue of certain amendments and different clauses which will be deleted in the Public Health Act. Like they are deleting the term food in the Public Health Act, they are coming up with a new definition. Controller means food safety. These are some of just the regular ones, but they are very, very important to note so that we can ensure that even when we talk about, this one is what I was looking for, Fertilizer and Animal Food Act, where now we're coming up with a new definition, and when you look at the new definition, the issue is just this controller. My focus, Madam Speaker, and this is why I really want to emphasize as I end, is that we must build the capacity of not only farmers, but also of county governments in ensuring food safety. That is why we're in this parliament. We're in this parliament to pass laws that not only build certain individuals' businesses, but bills that protect human life and bills that ensure that Kenyans are healthy. Madam Speaker, you'll be saddened if I tell you that in most part of this country, people just eat whatever they can eat because life becomes very expensive. If you go to our borders, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, sometimes people just, whatever they can get, if it's cheaper there, they just consume it. It is imperative that we add one other element in this bill that ensure that whatever we're importing, we don't only look at the issues of certificate of conformity or origin, we also look at within our standard. And I think that will call for us to look at our, trade treaties, to look at also our common commercial zones like the East African Community, so that we see whether our standards will be able to match with those ones. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support, and I really wish that county governments can be enhanced in terms of finances to support this issue of food safety. Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Mungatana.
Madam Speaker, kuhusu mswada huu wa safety ya chakula ama usafi wa chakula, na sheria hii, Madam Speaker, nataka kujiunga na wenzangu niseme kwamba ni sheria muhimu sana, na mimi sitakuwa mrefu sana, nitaongea tu kwa ufupi. Madam Speaker, mimi ni mmoja wa wale ambao wanawakilisha Kenya kwa COMESA Competition Commission, na muhula wangu utaisha mwaka ujao. Na kuna wakati tumeenda Malawi ambayo ndio headquarter ya COMESA Competition Commission, na barabarani tumetoka airport, Madam Speaker, nikaona kitu kingine maajabu sana, manake nilikuwa sijawahi kuona kitu kama hiyo. Nimeona arat, Kiswahili wanaitwa aje, naanza kusahau, panya. Madam Speaker, panya amekatwa vizuri, amekoka vizuri, na pale stage vijana wamekuja na panya wanajaribu kutuuzia. Sasa nikauliza wale wenzangu, hawa watu wa Malawi wanakula panya? Wakasema sisi tunakula panya. Nikaambia kule kwetu hiyo si kawaida, hawauzi nje. Wakasema hapana, it is very nice, ni mzuri sana, hebu ijaribu. Basi tukashusha vioo, kaitisha panya, tukalipa kwacha na tukakula, na ilikuwa mzuri sana, Madam Speaker. Niliporudi nyumbani baada ya kazi, na nikaambia watoto wangu kwamba mimi nilienda Malawi na nilikula panya, walisema usishike kwanza. Hawaamini kwamba hicho chakula ni sawa na pengine nimewaletea maradhi. Lakini Madam Speaker, angalia historia ingine ambayo niliambiwa. Mama ya mke wangu alisafiri akaenda Amerika, na kama kawaida kwa sababu kuna marafiki kule na nini, akabeba unga wa sima. Wakamwambia ukifika pale jaribu upitishe unga wa sima utuletee, hiyo ndio kitu, ndio zawadi tunataka utoke nao Kenya. Basi mama mkwe akabeba akaenda nayo. Alipofika pale mahali ya kuingilia immigration, walimuuliza umebeba nini? Amesema nimebeba nini, vitu vya kawaida. Akasema lakini hiyo ni nini? Akasema ni unga tu, kwani kuna shida gani? Wasema hatukubali unga. Akasema lakini ni jogoo. Kaambia jogoo haikubaliki hapa, na hakuweza kuingia nayo. Madam Speaker, standards zao kule tofauti kidogo na standards za kule Malawi. Madam Speaker, nitatoa mfano mwingine tena. Kakangu mkubwa ni mtu wa kusoma sana, ni professor wa economics, anafanya kazi Afrika Kusini. Miaka ile alipokuwa mdogo kidogo na alipokuwa anatafuta usomi, alienda Germany kufanya doctorate yake, shahada yake ya 3. Na alikuwa hajui Kijerumani, kwa hivyo anaingia dukani, ananunua nyama, chakula, nini, anaenda na pika kama kawaida kama watu wote wa pale. Basi akatuandikia barua. Miaka hiyo ilikuwa hakuna SMS, hakuna WhatsApp, hakuna hizi simu hizi za rununu. Ilikuwa miaka ile tulioishi sisi, Madam Speaker, unajua unaandika barua kisha unangoja. Akaandika barua, Madam Speaker, na akatuambia maisha huku mazuri sana. Nyama, chakula cha nyama ni bei rahisi sana. Haya, tukasema vizuri, na ikakaa kama mwezi mzima hivi. Baadaye akaja akaandika barua ya pili, akasema familia, ile nyama nilikuwa nanunua kwa kama wiki 2, nilikuwa sijasoma vizuri, lakini ile ilikuwa ni pande ya pet, wale nini, Kiswahili sijui anaitwaje, lakini pande ya wanyama wa nyumbani. Na mimi nilikuwa naenda nanunua ile nyama, manake ilikuwa ni rahisi, bei rahisi. Lakini hakuwa mgonjwa ndugu yangu. Alipojua kile Kijerumani vizuri, alienda kununua nyama upande ule wa sawa sawa. Lakini hakuwa mgonjwa kwa sababu ya zile standard ambazo wanaweka upande ule wa nchi zilizoendelea. Sasa mimi nasema namna hii, hapa Kenya Mimi ni mmoja wale watu ambao napenda sana kula njugu, na sipendi zile njugu za kule supermarket. Napenda hizi njugu ambazo tunazipata hapa barabarani. Mheshimiwa Kwalale anajua wakati wa campaign ukiwa barabarani unakula ile ambayo inapatikana. Manake ukiona nini hapo unakula. Na twashukuru Mungu mpaka saa hii sijawahi kupata ugonjwa ati nimetafuna njugu ama nimekula chakula cha barabarani na nimepata ugonjwa. Lakini Madam Speaker, pengine wakati umefika sasa kwa sisi wa Kenya na sisi tuingie katika jumuiya ya nchi ambazo zimeendelea, ambazo zinatoa standards ya chakula ambacho sisi tunakula. Ili yule ambaye anauza zile njugu pale barabarani, yule ambaye anaoka mikate pale barabarani, yule ambaye anapika chakula nje pale, awe tukiwa tunakula chakula chake ni mtu ambaye amepitia hali ya kupimwa na chakula chake kimekubalika, na hii sheria inasema ya kwamba kutakuwa msimamizi ambaye atakuwa anasimamia mambo haya ya usafi na standard ya chakula. Madam Speaker, kwa hivyo mimi nasimama kabisa kuunga mkono mswada huu kwa sababu itasaidia Wakenya wengi sana. Madam Speaker, wakati tulipokuwa na COVID, wengi wetu tuliingia habit ama mazoea ya kuosha mikono yetu. Kila saa tunaosha mikono. Ama ukipita mahali ambapo kuna hizi dawa za disinfect mikono, unaosha mikono yako. Na Madam Speaker, ukweli ni kwamba mambo ya kukohoa, mambo ya kikohozi, mambo ya mafua wakati huo yalipungua. Na ni kwa sababu ya usafi ambao watu walifanya ni mazoea. Kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, Mama Speaker, pia tukiingiza standard ya usafi katika vyakula ambavyo vinapikwa kila mahali, watu watazoea. Standard zetu zitakuwa kubwa. Hata tukiwa tunapika nini na watu wako barabarani, ama watu wako kwa hoteli, ama watu wako wapi, watakuwa na ile imani ya kwamba katika nchi ya Kenya mambo ya vyakula vyao vinasimamiwa sawa na sheria. Na mimi ningependa kusema namna hii, Madam Speaker, kuna vipengele hivi ambavyo viko katika sheria hii ambao pengine ingekuwa vizuri waviangalie zaidi, kwa sababu vipengele hivi vinaweza kuleta mushkil kati ya serikali gatuzi na kati ya ofisi hii ambayo tunaiunda kupitia kwa hii sheria. Madam Speaker, kwa sasa vyakula vyote, ukitaka kufanya biashara ya restaurant, ukitaka kufungua kibanda, wanataka uende kwa county government. Kwa hivyo mpaka sahihi ukweli ni kwamba watu wetu lazima wapate leseni kutoka kwa serikali gatuzi. Kama hapa Nairobi ukitaka kufungua restaurant lazima uende pale na wanakupatia condition, wanakuambia watu wako wakiwa wanapika lazima wavae zile kofia, watu wakiwa wanaserve chakula lazima wavae zile kofia, mambo kadha wa kadha, wasiweke makucha marefu na mambo kama hayo. Kwa hivyo ikiwa tunaweka mkaguzi wa vyakula ambao sasa anakuwa katika sheria hii, ni lazima tuangalie hichi kipengele cha 16 ambayo imezungumzia kuhusu kazi za serikali gatuzi. Tunataka iwe sawasawa na vile mambo iko sahihi. Yaani kwa ufupi, tusiweke sheria ambayo itagongana na mipangilio ambayo tayari iko. Serikali gatuzi kama ziko na mipangilio yake, ingekuwa vyema hasa wakati wa public participation ya hii sheria. Tafadhali tunaomba waite serikali gatuzi, waite Council of Governors, watoe maoni yao kwa urefu kuhusu hii kipengele cha 16, kwa sababu hatutaki tutengeze sheria ambayo sisi maseneta ambao kazi yetu haswa katika katiba ni kusimamia na kusaidia serikali gatuzi, iwe tena hii sheria inaumiza serikali gatuzi. Kwa sababu sasa hapa tukisema kwamba hii sheria inasema ni lazima watengeze report za safety za county, safety food, feed safety, food safety za county. Hawasemi ni kwa muda gani, ni kwa mwaka ama ni kwa mwezi ama ni lini, na wanasema ni lazima wazitengeze, na hawaelezei ni standard gani ambazo hizi ripoti za usafi wa vyakula wa sehemu gatuzi, hawaelezei ni nini ambayo haswa hii sheria inataka. Manake ukiandika tu line moja ambayo hajielezi, unaleta shida kwa serikali gatuzi. Kwa hivyo hichi kipengele cha 16 ni lazima wajieleze vizuri. Manake wakisema kwamba watasimamia, watafanya evaluation of a multi-annual, yani plan ya miaka kadhaa, na hawaelezei hii plani wanataka iandikwe nini. Hawaelezei kama kuna regulations ambazo zitawekwa, na hawaelezei kwa uzito ama kwa undani zaidi mambo vile itafanywa na serikali za county. Mimi nasema hichi kipengele cha 16 kitaleta mushkil katikati ya county government ama serikali gatuzi na serikali kuu ya Kenya, na haswa kwa hii ofisi ya msimamizi wa usafi wa vyakula hapa Kenya. Kwa hivyo ningependa sana wakati ambapo hii sheria inaenda kuangaliwa kwa undani, wakati wa public participation, hii sheria iwekwe chini na watu wa kutoka kwa sehemu gatuzi wapewe nafasi, waongee zaidi na watoe mawazo yao. Na pia ningependa kuomba ile kamati ambayo itakalia hii sheria kutoka kwa Senate. Tumekuwa na mazoea ama habit ya kwamba wakati wanaita watu kufanya public participation ama kuchukua maoni ya wananchi, wanaenda kwa vikundi ambavyo vimejulikana. Wanaenda kwa county government, council of governors, wanaenda kwa Law Society of Kenya, wanaenda kwa vikundi, makanisa. Hao ndio wanawaita stakeholders. Lakini ningependa sana na ninaomba wakati hii kamati inakaa, waite hawa watu wadogo ambao wanafanya hizi kazi, wawasikize, ili wasiweke masharti ambayo yatagandamiza wafanyikazi na wafanyibiashara. Yule mama pika, yule anapika kule vibandani, wale vijana ambao wanapata chakula chao kwa kuuza kidogo korosho barabarani, kwa kuuza njugu barabarani, kwa kuuza mahindi ya kuchoma barabarani. Tungependa sana maoni yao pia yachukuliwe, si wakubwa peke yao, ama muende tu kwa hao ma restaurant makubwa ambao wako kwa organization kubwa. Chukueni watu wa kawaida, mwasikize maoni yao, kwa sababu tusije tukapitisha sheria, haswa hapa Senate, tusije tukapitisha sheria ambayo itamgandamiza mwananchi wa kawaida. Naomba sana wakati wa public participation hii jambo ifanyike, waite watu wa kawaida ambao sisi tunawajua. Manake watu kutoka nyumbani wengi wanafanya hustling hapa Nairobi, na tunawajua. Tukiambiwa tuwalete, tutawaleta ili nao waseme maoni yao. Jambo lingine kuhusu hii sheria, Mama Speaker, ni kwamba sheria hii haizungumzii peke yake chakula cha binadamu, inazungumzia chakula cha wanyama ambao sisi tunawakula, kama kuku, kama mbuzi na mambo kama hayo. Hivi vyakula vya ng'ombe, mbuzi na nini haviweki katika standard. Hakuna standard yoyote ambao wanatumia. Sisi tunaambiwa ukienda supermarket utasema hii ni chakula ya paka unanunua, hii ni chakula ya umbwa unanunua, lakini hakuna authority ama competent authority ambayo inafanya sisi tuwe na imani ya kwamba vyakula hivi ambavyo tunapatia wanyama wetu, hasa wale wanyama ambao wanatuletea pesa kama kuku, kama mbuzi, kama ng'ombe, hatujapewa zile standard ambazo zinatakikana. Kwa hivyo tunafurahia. Kitu kimoja tu ambacho ningependa kuongezea kwa hii sheria ni kuwaomba wale wameileta hii sheria watengeneze mahali ambapo kutakuwa kukifanyika research. Manake hakuna chochote ambacho wamefanya, hakuna kipengele chochote ambacho kinahusika na utafiti. Hakuna mahali ambapo hii ofisi ambayo tunaitengeza ya usafi wa vyakula imezungumzia kuhusu utafiti. Tunataka tuwe na kipengele ambacho kitaongea kuhusu utafiti, na utafiti huu usaidie katika kutengeneza standards ambazo zitasaidia Wakenya ikiwa tunakula chakula ni nje, ni barabarani, ni kwa mikahawa, ni kwa mahoteli, ziwe zinafika mahali pazuri. Pia kuwe na standard ambayo tunajua kama mtu anakula hapa, kibali chake kinaonyesha kwamba huyu mtu chakula chake kimepitishwa, na usiwe na wasiwasi wakati unakula hii chakula. Sisi tutafurahia sana, na tukiona hii sheria imepita tutafurahi, kwa sababu itakuwa inaleta Kenya kwa kiwango cha wale cha zile nchi ambazo zimeendelea kwa usafi wa vyakula ambavyo vinaleta afya nchini na kwa wananchi wao. Kwa hayo mengi ambayo nimesema, naomba kuunga mkono sheria hii ambayo tunaiunda, na naomba wenzangu ambao wananisikiza pia waipitishe wakati ambao tunaipitisha hii sheria. Asante Madam Speaker.
There's no other request for speaking. I now call upon the mover to reply.
Asante sana dadangu Mama Speaker kwa hii nafasi. Ningependa kutumia nafasi hii Speaker kuambia wale wote ambao wamechangia hii hoja asante sana, na kuhakikisha kwamba wanamambaita maoni yenu na maono yenu tumeyasikia, na kwa hakika wakati tutafika awamu ya 3 ya kutunza hii sheria, hii maoni yenu itachangia. Mwisho kabisa, ningependa kuhakikisha wananchi kwa jumla, wakati hii hoja itakuja mbele yenu katika ile awamu ya public participation, mchukue advantage, muhakikisha kwamba vile vile maoni yenu tumeyasikia na kuyapata. Na kwa haya machache Mama Speaker, nasema asante na ninaomba kujibu. Asante. Pole sana Mama Speaker, kwa sababu ambazo zinaeleweka, ningependa kusimama kwa hoja ya hudumu nambari 66-3 kuomba kwamba uamuzi kuhusu hii hoja iahirishwe mpaka ile siku wewe mwenyewe utapendelea kuamua. Asante sana Mama Speaker.
It is so. Postponed to the next sitting. Next order. Honorable members, allow me to reorganize the sequence of the order paper, and I wish to call on order number 21. Thank you.
Order number 21, motion. Report of the ad hoc committee to investigate the proliferation of religious organizations and circumstances leading to more than 95 deaths in Shakahola, Kilifi County.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the ad hoc committee to investigate the proliferation of religious organizations and circumstances leading to the deaths of more than 95 people in Shakahola, Kilifi County, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday 19th October 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 223. Madam Speaker, honorable members will recall that in a Senate sitting held on Thursday, 27th April 2023, a motion to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the proliferation of religious organizations and the circumstances linked to the deaths of 195 people in Shakahola, Kilifi County was passed pursuant to Standing Order number 199 of the Senate Standing Orders. Madam Speaker, you remember on that day, it was on the suggestion of the ever hard-working Honorable Senator Boni Khalwale that this House was persuaded, Madam Speaker, that we should in fact form an ad hoc committee to handle that issue. And Madam Speaker, the ad hoc committee was formed. The ad hoc committee had various mandates, Madam Speaker. Number one, it was to investigate the circumstances leading to the death of the followers of Good News International Ministries, led by one Paul Mackenzie Ndenge in Shakahola Village, Kilifi County. Number two, to investigate the role played by one Paul Mackenzie of the Good News International Ministry, his pastoral team, and the Kilifi County Security Committee in aiding and abetting the deaths of the followers of the Good News International Ministry in Shakahola, Kilifi County. Number three, to establish through the Office of the Registrar of Societies the number and activities of religious groups in the country, including the registration and compliance status. Number four, to audit the legal and registration framework for religious organizations in the country. Number five, develop a legislative proposal on regulation of religious activities in the country. Number six, make any other recommendation that will prevent religious organization from extreme indoctrination of their followers, including radicalization, spiritual and financial exploitation. Madam Speaker, the membership of the committee was made up as follows: Senator Mungatana, Senator Shakila Mohammed, Senator Mohammed Faki Minyihaji, Senator Abdul Haji, MP, Senator William Kipkoror, Cheptumo, Senator Richard Onyonka, Senator Veronica Maina, Senator Hamida Kibwana, Senator Tabitha Mutinda, Senator Eddie Okech, Senator David Wakoli Wafula. Madam Speaker, I really want to take a minute or so to pay tribute to the hard work of these senators. Madam Speaker, my Vice Chairperson Shakila Mohammed was ever present. We had brilliant contributions, Madam Speaker, from senators such as Eddie Okech, Madam Speaker, who is one of those young senators, Mr. Speaker, that has distinguished himself when it comes to work. And Madam Speaker, I really pay tribute to the work that he put in here. And it gives me hope, Madam Speaker, that maybe even as we grow older, the country will still be in good hands as we leave the stage at some point. Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge the work put in by Senator Cheptumo, who was always there, Madam Speaker, and who really put in a lot of work in this committee. I acknowledge every other member, including Senator Veronica Maina, very hard-working lady. Madam Speaker, I really appreciate fellow senators. Without them, Madam Speaker, it would not have been possible to come up with a report such as this that really gave direction on what we should do with religious organizations. Madam Speaker, the Senate gave us 90 days to complete our investigation and to table the report on 26 July. However, the committee sought an extension through a motion that was adopted by the House on the 1st of August 2023. The committee was granted an extension of 30 days to conclude its work and report on the 5th of September 2023. Due to the evolving nature of events, on the 3rd of October, the House granted the committee another 14 days from 5th of October to conclude its work, and we then went on to table the final report on the 14th of October 2023. Conduct of the investigation. Madam Speaker, we adopted a work plan on the 3rd of May 2023, and we prepared a framework for stakeholder investigations and engagement of the public hearings. Madam Speaker, in pursuant to our mandate under Article 118 of the Constitution, we invited various stakeholders and members of the public to submit their views to this committee. The committee also went on fact-finding visits to Kilifi County and Vihiga and Kisumu counties. Madam Speaker, during these visits, the committee received first-hand information from survivors of the tragedy, victims of the families of these victims, county security committees, religious groups, and civil society groups. In total, Madam Speaker, the committee received both oral submissions and written submissions from more than 208 stakeholders and members of the public. Madam Speaker, I really want to also take this opportunity to thank the members of the public who were able to come up, gather courage and meet all of us and give us the necessary information that led us to have a good report that we have been able to table here. We were able to visit Shakahola Forest itself. We were able to interact with the agencies that were involved in the exhumation processes, in the investigation processes, and we were able also to visit the compound itself of Mr. Paul Mackenzie that was located in the middle of that forest in Shakahola, where he coordinated his activities that we really think were heinous. Madam Speaker, at the end of the report, we have attached pictures that will show some of the things that you were able to see in the Shakahola place. Challenges that we experienced, Madam Speaker. The committee covered very highly sensitive matters, and some of them we were told could have been prejudicial to any future prosecution against Paul Mackenzie, another person. The committee was alive to the fact that investigations and intelligence gathering on the circumstances surrounding the deaths in Shakahola were still ongoing, and placing sensitive information in the public domain was likely to negatively affect the prosecution of witnesses or suspects implicated in this case. The committee, because of this reason, resolved to omit certain individuals from its interrogation, and specific evidence that was received in camera sessions and documents were classified as confidential. A summary of the key issues raised in the evidence is, however, contained in the body of this report. So what we're saying, Madam Speaker, is that although we did not name particular people because we had an agreement with some of the investigating agencies and some of the prosecutorial agencies, we agreed that they will give us the information, we'll take it in camera, and we be able to use it, but in a way that will not prejudice the cases that they intended to prosecute. So, Madam Speaker, we have been faithful to that, and the body of the report contains this information, but in a way that will not prejudice any other proceedings. Madam Speaker, the sensitivities of this matter aside, the committee also encountered a few challenges in the execution of its mandate. Firstly, given the complexity and the evolving nature of the investigation, the initial time limit of 90 days to fulfill its mandate was not enough. So we had the problem of time, but also apart from the problem of time, we had the problem of resource allocations. Madam Speaker, many times we wanted to get some funding to do this and the other. We were not able to secure the funding as we had wished. Madam Speaker, we had intended to go to a place like Uganda, Madam Speaker, where 1,000 people were killed in a church because they were promised heaven and they had sold their possessions. And we had intended to go to Nigeria and see how they manage their situation, because like in Nigeria, there is a law that says you cannot perform live miracles on television. They have outlawed that. We wanted to hear the experiences in Kigali, where the administration there decided that all churches must register afresh, and they gave certain conditions under which they would get the continuing of their registration. So resource constraints made it very difficult for us to get first-hand information on some of these places. Madam Speaker, we had even intended to go to a country like the US, which has a lot of experience with these cults, and France. So we went to desk research to support the findings of this report instead of actually visiting the places that would have given us first-hand information. Madam Speaker, more gravely, despite extending invitations and issuing summonses, the committee was unable to procure attendances of key witnesses. These include the former Kilifi County Security Committee members who were transferred following the discovery of the tragedy in Shakahola Forest. The committee felt very strongly, Madam Speaker, that we needed to talk to those people. The committee felt that it was not in keeping with what we would want, that immediately the minister had announced, the minister in charge, Professor Kithure Kindiki, immediately this tragedy became public. He announced the transfer of those security committee members, all of them, so that now when we go to meet them, we would meet the team that is there, all of them are new. So they wouldn't give you first-hand information. So it was the feeling of the committee that we meet the immediate original security committee holders of office of the Security Committee in Kilifi County before their transfer. Madam Speaker, we had people like Joseph Kemboi. We wanted to interrogate him, but we didn't get, who was the senior superintendent of police of the sub-county and also the sub-county police commander of Malindi. We didn't get him. There was a second one called Charles Kamau Wanguhu, who was the assistant superintendent of police, ASP, and also senior county criminal investigation officer in Malindi. We didn't get him. We wanted to interview Solomon Odera, who is the superintendent of police, sub-county police commander. We didn't get him. We wanted to talk to Aragamso Guracha, superintendent of police, critical infrastructure protection unit in Malindi. We didn't get him. We wanted to talk to Augusto Okuna, who is the OCS Malindi, officer commanding police station Malindi. We didn't get him. We wanted to speak to Hassan Hamara, who is the OCS of Langobaya. Again, we didn't get him, Madam Speaker. We wanted to speak to Calvin Maloa Otieno, who is the DCI Malindi, Directorate of Criminal Investigation. We didn't get him. We wanted Daniel Muthusi Muleli, County Criminal Investigation Officer, CCIO, who had also been moved. We wanted Jacinta Wesonga, who is the County Police Commander, who had also been moved. We wanted Paul Mawe, Critical Infrastructure Protection Unit, who had also been moved. We wanted Joseph Yator, police officer attached to DCI, who had been moved. These 11 people, Madam Speaker, it was the feeling of the committee that they be brought. And they were invited via letter through the Cabinet Secretary, Interior and National Administration. In the invitation letter dated 30th June 2023, the committee requested the Cabinet Secretary, Interior, to facilitate the attendance of these transferred officer before the committee on the 7th July to shed light on certain matters, including formal complaints that had been registered against Paul Mackenzie's activities, actions taken to mitigate the radical activities of Good News International Ministries, and an explanation of reasons for the delay in acting of the intelligence received on the radical activities of Good News International Ministries. On 7th of July, when the committee was expecting to meet the transferred officers, the Cabinet Secretary, Interior, Professor Kithure Kindiki, appeared before the committee and informed the committee that some of these transferred officers were witnesses and some were suspects in the ongoing investigations into the Shakahola tragedy. As such, to avoid jeopardizing the ongoing investigations, the Cabinet Secretary, Interior and National Administration sought to speak on behalf of the transferred officer, a request which the committee initially accepted. So when he came, he said, we have a problem because these people may be witnesses. So allow me to speak on their behalf. And we accepted in the first meeting. But the committee continued with the investigations because apart from meeting the minister, we met many other people. And so over time, as the information kept on coming, as some gaps were being created, we felt very strongly that what the minister had presented was not enough. There was some evidence, some information that the real officers who are on the ground would have that the minister did not possess and would not be privy to. So those gaps that were still gaping, we wanted these officers to come and fill in those gaps. Accordingly, the committee on 6th October resolved to issue summons to the transferred officers to appear before the committee on 13th of October. Now, on the 7th of October, the process server traveled to Malindi sub-county with the intention of obtaining information of the whereabouts of the transferred officers. The process server reported to the committee that he was unable to obtain the details of the transferred officer. As such, the committee's efforts to obtain the whereabouts of the transferred officers were not successful. So we did not get a chance because the process server in his sworn affidavit and a return of service to us explained the difficulties that he was undergoing. Despite extending the invitations again on the 6th July, 10th July 2023, 18th July, and issuing the summonses on 6th October, the chief government pathologist, Dr. Johansen Odwor, failed to appear before the committee. Dr. Odwor's appearance before the committee was important for us because we felt that as a chief government pathologist, he played a role in identifying the cause of death of the bodies that had been exhumed in the Shakahola forest. And we also felt that he was a person who was in charge of the DNA matching process. So we felt that it was important for him to appear in person. And because he did not appear at that time, the committee resolved to issue a fine of 500,000 to be paid by Dr. Odwor personally. And we also ordered that the Inspector General of Police to arrest Dr. Odwor and present him before the committee on the 17th October. That notwithstanding, Dr. Odwor was not presented to the committee by the Inspector General as we had wished. So therefore, this report does not have the information from Dr. Johansen that we would have wanted to receive from him. The committee, however, then received an email dated 17th October 2023 from Dr. Johansen Odwor, and he informed the committee that he was at all times willing to appear before the committee, but was requested by the Cabinet Secretary for Health, Honorable Susan Nangumicha, to appear before the committee, not to appear before the committee on the basis that investigations were ongoing. Additionally, Dr. Odwor informed the committee that he was informed that the Cabinet Secretary, Interior and National Administration, Professor Kithure Kindiki, would appear before the committee in his place. So he explained his absence before the committee. Dr. Odwor also pleaded with the committee to vacate the resolution to impose a fine upon him. The committee deliberated on this matter and resolved to reprimand Dr. Odwor for failing to appear before the committee. It should be noted by all persons that summons before a parliamentary committee are a serious matter, and any person who is summoned to appear before a parliamentary committee should appear, any reservations notwithstanding. However, we felt very strongly that, you see, Dr. Johansen Odwor was in a difficult place, and should he obey his minister or should he come before the committee? And because of the problem that we saw, and we saw he's a long-standing doctor who has served this country diligently and explained himself that it was other factors rather than his willingness to obey the summonses from the Senate that prevented him from coming. He was always ready to present himself. So, Madam Speaker, we then vacated the decision to fine 500,000 against this hard-working civil servant. Madam Speaker, we also we faced the other challenge of not being able to interview Paul Mackenzie himself, because we issued summons on the 7th October for Paul Mackenzie to appear before the committee on the 13th of October to answer, among other things, his beliefs and ideology and how he ran Good News International Ministries. We wanted him to tell us about the circumstances that led to the death of the followers of his ministry at the time. We wanted him to tell us about his association with an entity known as A Voice in the Desert from Australia, and we wanted the effect of the ideology or the thinking that that Voice of the Desert ministry in Australia had on him. We also wanted to know the sources of funding of Good News International Ministries. However, in the first time, the process server was obstructed by the officer in charge at Shimo-la-Tewa from effecting the summonses on the basis that the summons could only be effected through approval of the Director General of Prisons, which we said this is an unknown process in law. So on 13th October, we resolved to issue a second summons to Paul Mackenzie to be presented before the committee on the 17th October. We also said that the second summons should be accompanied by a warning letter to the officer in charge of Shimo-la-Tewa prisons, informing him of the consequences of obstructing service of summons pursuant to Section 27 subsection 3A and 27 subsection 4 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017. After we gave this notice, the officer in charge of Shimo-la-Tewa prison decided to comply with the summonses of the Senate, and service was effected upon Paul Mackenzie. Now, I wanted also to take this opportunity to just inform the House and all those listening that the consequences, if you are a government officer and you have been served with summons, the consequences of failing to answer to Senate summonses and make your appearances will be personal to you. It is not your boss, because those summonses are not addressed to your boss, they are addressed to you. And if you are served and you don't appear, you will suffer the consequences of the law. So it is better to come and say what you know, even to come and say that you've been told not to say something. But it is better to come and say that there are things you can't say because of the nature of the information you have, and you can even request to be heard in private, and the committees of this House will always be willing to understand. However, on the date when Paul Mackenzie was supposed to appear before the committee received two letters. One letter was from retired Brigadier John Warioba, who is the Commissioner General of Prisons, and the other one was from Wycliffe Makasembo, who is the lawyer on record for Paul Mackenzie. Now, the lawyer for Makasembo requested for time because he said he needed to prepare his client to appear before the committee. So he requested for at least 1 month. Brigadier Warioba, him on his other hand, wrote a letter to tell us he feels that Paul Mackenzie is a high-risk prisoner who also required proper security arrangements before he is transported to Nairobi. So he asked that he be given more time, and the time for us was not there. So we had to miss the information or the opportunity to examine the evidence of Paul Mackenzie. Madam Speaker, I have elaborated in detail the committee's efforts to procure the attendance of crucial witnesses and how the committee's efforts were obstructed at every turn by Professor Kithure Kindiki, the Cabinet Secretary of Interior and National Administration, and Honorable Susan Nahumicha, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, who are public officers who ought to have facilitated the committee in execution of its mandate. If anything, the committee would have received the evidence in camera if that was an issue, And in fact, it did receive evidence from National Intelligence Service in camera. We also did receive the Director of Criminal Investigations and the Office of the DPP. We received this evidence in camera. So we did not understand why the two ministers were not willing to facilitate the committee to execute their duty. So it is the committee's very strong feeling that we condemn the actions of the two ministers and ask them to realize that the work we do is for the people and it is for the benefit of Kenyans. So Kenyans, you should know why we did not get to investigate some of those witnesses. Madam Speaker, during a meeting with the DCI, Director of Criminal Investigation, held on 13th October, the DCI extended an invitation of the committee to visit the National Forensic Laboratory at the DCI headquarters. And some members went to visit the laboratory, and despite being a very modern, state-of-the-art laboratory, Madam Speaker, it is faced with numerous challenges. For example, Madam Speaker, there are 12 laboratories that are within the big lab itself. And out of the 12 labs, only 8 are functional at the DCI because some of the machines were outdated and some of the service contracts have expired. Madam Speaker, you see that of the 8 that are functional, you see even some of them, they lack reagents, to do the work that they are supposed to do. Some of them, they lack funding to do procurement. Madam Speaker, although they are very technical and highly trained staff, you will find that in the DCI, even when they collect the samples, Madam Speaker, to bring to the headquarters for testing and doing the normal collection of evidence, Madam Speaker, you will find that they don't have the specialized motor vehicles to carry those samples from Shakahola all the way. Madam Speaker, you will find that the Department of Chemistry and the Biology, which are supposed to be the main departments that would have helped in DNA identification, Madam Speaker, those departments are not functional. And therefore, people have been asking, why is it taking so long to get these things done? It is because, although they are collecting the samples from down there, when they come to Nairobi, the Department of Chemistry is not there, functional, biology is not functional, so they have to go and queue at the government chemist, like all the other government departments. At the government chemist, they have to queue there so that they can get their samples. And Madam Speaker, it takes a little longer, actually a lot more longer than they wanted. Madam Speaker, the committee observed that the National Forensic Laboratory at the DCI headquarters require additional funding of Kenya shillings 340 million to upgrade the biology forensic lab and another 117 million to upgrade the chemistry forensic lab. The committee further noted that there was need to pursue sustainable funding mechanism and financial autonomy of the National Forensic Lab, for instance through revenue-raising initiatives such as capacity building for the region. And Madam Speaker, the South African Science Lab serves as a benchmark for the region where Kenya could greatly benefit. Madam Speaker, when you look at why there was in fact a delay, Madam Speaker, in getting these samples, in getting these samples processed, it's because we are having technical issues at the National Laboratory, at the National Forensic Lab. Madam Speaker, this forensic lab, it falls under the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration. It is not funded properly, and it will take a longer time, therefore, to conclude the work they are supposed to do with Shakahola. So it is important, Madam Speaker, that the Cabinet Secretary prioritizes the funding of this place, and also the inadequacies in the lab, the National Forensic Lab, is a weak link in the pursuit of justice for the Shakahola victims. Madam Speaker, we also noticed that there were failure by the judiciary. It was not lost that Paul Mackenzie had so many cases pending before court. With every new case filed, Paul Mackenzie was given very lenient bail terms, which in the committee's view, were not commensurate to the crimes that he was being accused of. The judiciary ought to explore a way to strengthen bail and bond policy guidelines to provide for more stringent bail terms for offenders who may have pending cases in court. Yes.
Honorable members, honorable senators, it's now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. Senator Danson Gatana has a balance of 25 minutes to finish moving the motion. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 28th November 2023 at 2:30 p.m.
Possession of movable assets by lending institutions due to non-performing loans. The debate on this bill, or on this motion, I beg your pardon, already began. The balance of time remaining is 2 hours. Another motion which has been lined up in the order of business this afternoon include the report of the ad hoc committee to investigate the proliferation of religious organizations and circumstances leading to more than 95 deaths in Shakahola, Kilifi County, and a motion by the Senator for Meru County, Senator Kathuru Murungi, on the report of the 146th Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union and related meetings held in Manama, Kingdom of Bahrain from 11th to 15th of March 2023. Senator Christula Sige will move a motion on designation of a monthly car-free day and county car-free zones. The senator is concerned that the number of private vehicles has significantly grown, leading to increased road accidents, carbon emission, and vehicle congestion costs, which are in excess of 100 billion shillings in GDP per year. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Ministry of Roads and Transport, in collaboration with the Council of Governors and the National Climate Change Council, to 1. Identify, publicize, and execute suitable monthly car-free days and county car-free zones in urban areas. 2. Provide affordable, safe, and efficient public transport
including but not limited to development of bus rapid transport in the urban areas. 3. Encourage the use of electric hybrid buses and provide appropriate incentives for their use. And finally, design an infrastructure that can support non-motorized transport facilities such as pedestrian and bicycle access within urban centers and ensure intermodal connectivity among the various transport modes. That is a motion that will be moved by the Senator Crystal Asige. Senator Catherine Muma will also move a motion on the development of a policy and law for social risk management in infrastructure development projects in Kenya. The Senator is concerned that inadequate attention to social risks in the planning and implementation of development projects at both national and county levels makes them unacceptable and end up costing the taxpayer colossal sums of money in suits filed before the courts and tribunals by local communities and affected interest groups seeking protection from such social risks. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that 1. The national and county governments develop a social risk management policy that outlines the standards, guidelines, and procedures for guiding infrastructure and other development projects both at the national and county governments. And 2. The National Executive establishes an independent multi-sectoral agency under the authority of the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Social Security and Protection to design a mechanism that can factor in the inclusion of social impact assessments, standards, and monitor their implementation in infrastructure and other development projects in Kenya. That motion will be moved by the Honorable Senator Catherine Muma. As well, there are a number of statements which will be sought this afternoon, and other statements will be issued as well. But pursuant to Standing Order 52.1, the nominated Senator Crystal Asige will make a statement regarding commemorating the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims observed on 19th of November annually. And pursuant to Standing Order 53.1, the Senator from Marsabit County, Senator Mohammed Chute, will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing regarding the status of completion of Bunge Tower. The Senator from Marsabit County will also seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Education concerning the conversion of scholarship grants to loans by the Higher Education Loans Board. The nominated Senator Hezena Lemaletian will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the prevalence of throat cancer in Samburu County. Nominated Senator Shakila Abdallah will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget concerning customs, regulations and taxation for travelers returning to Kenya via the Kenyatta International Airport. If you're just joining us, the business of the Senate is about to begin. I will now hand you over for this live broadcast courtesy of PBU and KBC. My name is Edward Kabasa. Enjoy your viewing.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. Amen.